Story 1. One time, a random girl at a music festival told me, "Your light is so bright you could guide your whole clan through the darkness." Story 2. I was 21 or 22 in the bathroom at a bar. Very shy and insecure at the time. I was fixing my hair in the mirror when a woman told me that I was prettier than I would ever realize. I have never forgotten her or her kindness, as she did not have to tell me that. Story 3. My Nana told me that I make her feel safe. She is my favorite person in the whole world and the only one I can be completely myself around, or she will call me out if I'm not. I didn't think that I was that person for her until she told me. Story 4. Many people have told me I have a calming and comforting presence. I appreciate hearing that because I try to cultivate it every day. Story 5. A psychologist was listening to me one day in therapy, and he paused after I said something. He then remarked, "Wow, you're really a well-put-together human being." It was one of the simplest yet nicest things I've ever heard someone say to me. Story 6. No one has ever believed in me like you have, and it has saved my life in more ways than I can explain. It has stuck with me to this day. Story 7. I was told I had the prettiest face someone had ever seen by a complete stranger on the internet, and for some reason, that made me feel good about myself. Story 8. Not sure if this counts as a compliment, but I took it as one for sure. A brief backstory. I lost my mother in 2013 to an overdose. We were very close. She was my best friend. I was obviously devastated, and for a year or so I kept a voicemail so I could hear her voice from time to time. Full disclosure. I was in active addiction at the time, which led to numerous trips to jail and prison. During one of my stays in jail, the number attached to that voicemail was disconnected. After a few years, I realized that I was no longer able to recall the sound of my mother's voice. For some reason, that sent me over the edge, and I found myself losing any progress in my grieving process. Fast forward to 2022, and I was in prison. I had the opportunity to call an uncle I hadn't spoken to in over 15 years. The first thing he said to me was, "Well, I'll be damned, you sound just like Melanie." Melanie is my mother. Story 9. A girl once told me I had really pretty eyes. Later in life, she told me I had a really nice appearance. She was a truly kind person. Story 10. I work in an adolescent psychiatric facility. A young woman told me a few months ago that I was the first person to make her feel safe enough to start working through her issues. She began therapy services the very next day. I am so proud of her. Story 11. Dresses I made for myself and my baby daughter were beautiful. I worked hard on them, and it was only the third dress I had ever made. The highlight was when she offered me money to make matching dresses for her and her daughter. Story 12. From a drunk guy in a bar while I was grieving my girlfriend's father's passing and celebrating his life. Drunk guy, "Dude, you're really attractive." Me, awkward with compliments, dead silence. Drunk guy, "You're like a god, like a Greek god or something." Me, genuine silence because I didn't know how to take this information. Both of us went about our day. It was a very weird experience. Story 13. I encountered a young girl, possibly around 7 years old, while at Target. She gasped and exclaimed, "You look like a princess." I was so taken aback. I've never received a compliment that made me feel as good. I wanted to swing her around in a bear hug, but I didn't want her mom to think I was strange. Instead, I said, "Thank you. So do you." Nevertheless, I spent the rest of my day wishing she knew how much her words meant to me. Story 14. I am 32 years old, and the other day, a couple of people complimented me on how thick my hair is. I am absolutely thrilled about that since everyone else I know is losing theirs now. Story 15. I had a little child say, "Look, Mom, it's a fairy," and pointed at me because I had pink hair. At a rock concert, I was walking up the stairs when a man was walking down. We made brief eye contact, and then he said out loud to his friend, "I think I just saw the hottest girl I've ever seen in my life." I know it's superficial to value my appearance, but at the time I was very insecure and self-conscious, and it made me feel so good. I still think about it. Story 16. My favorite compliment has always been people telling me how creative I am. It makes my ADHD brain feel less useless. Story 17. A friend once captioned a picture on social media saying I was like the bubbles in soda. I have been trying to live up to that for 10 years. Story 18. I attend a school for grades 7 to 12. I enjoy dressing in soft kawaii Japanese fashion, complemented by Jirai K-inspired makeup. I am a member of my school's yearbook committee, and I have visited the 7th and 8th grade classes a few times to take pictures. One day I returned, and an 8th grader created a drawing of me. It was a wonderful sketch, and I was deeply touched. Story 19. So get comfortable, this is a long one. I am a poor white individual from a remote area. However, I got lucky. I had a good understanding of art, which led me to discover a possible way out of my circumstances through graphic design, a field I was learning to love. I obtained a job as a designer, making very little money at the age of 22. I was living at home and hand washing and drying the same worn-out khakis every night because I was working with what I had. At that time, I was living in the office, learning all I could about Adobe and what was then Macromedia software. I was striving for something, but there should be no confusion. I was struggling financially. I had nothing and nothing to offer. Naturally, my social prospects, particularly romantic ones, were tied to this same difficult existence. Girls didn't come around, which led me to turn off the lights and close the door to that part of my life. I promise we're getting to a point here. One night, after a grueling 30-plus hours on an in-office deadline, my publisher was driving me home. I didn't have a car, as I mentioned, and making small talk. He asked about my dating life, likely just to keep the conversation going. I mentioned that things weren't really happening. He said, "Oh, come on. A guy like you." I responded by explaining how I was a bit of a mess and didn't want to burden any poor girl with my issues. Then he said something key. "Well, most people aren't as interested in honesty as you. Let's unpack this a bit." We were both exhausted, and he was likely just making small talk. Maybe he meant it, maybe he didn't. However, someone else saying that to me about me? Now, I'm going to try hard to live up to that statement. It's the best compliment I've ever received because it subtly compelled me to become a better person. No matter what I do, that quote lingers in my mind, reminding me, "You're better than this." Story 20. My cousin recently bought a house near me, and she casually mentioned that she feels safe living on her own because I'm so close. It may seem small, but I was a total failure for most of my life, and being considered that way really meant something to me. Story 21. A couple of years ago, my son paid me the highest compliment anyone could give a parent. We were talking about young adults behaving like teenagers. He is gainfully employed and bought his first home at 22. He looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you for not letting me run around and act like a little jerk when I was younger." Yes, it was the nicest compliment I've ever heard. I have been accused of being tough on my kids, but I am proud to say I have good kids and a very good son. Story 22. A nice old Chinese lady who lived in my building told me that I looked like Tommy Lee Jones, not the current version, but more like the one from the Men in Black era. Story 23. After 15 years of not seeing a family friend, he told me, "Look at you. You've gone from an ugly duckling to a swan. You know the ugly duckling? That was you. But now you're beautiful." He has a creepy uncle-type demeanor. Story 24. Not really a compliment, but my hand accidentally brushed against a girl's backside once. I apologized, and she said I could touch her anytime. I felt awkward because I just stood there without anything cool to say. Story 25. I know I don't really know you, but since we've been chatting online, I can already tell you are not American. Story 26. At first, I thought it was an insult because the saying, "you have a face for the radio," usually implies someone is unattractive. I was working at Starbucks when a guy told me I had a voice for the radio through the speaker box and said he could listen to me talk every day. Each time he came through, he wanted to talk to me because he really liked my voice for some reason. Story 27. A recent compliment was nice, but it was her radiant eyes that struck me. The sun shines brighter when she is in the room. Story 28. A homeless woman trying to sell something told me I had very pretty eyes. Besides my friends, I haven't heard a compliment like that in a long time. Story 29. I'm glad you're on my team. This was said by a friend I was assisting after a security breach. Within a few minutes, I determined that the threat actors were still present in their systems. I took steps to lock them out and then remediate the situation. While this process seemed trivial to me, it meant a great deal to him, so the compliment carried more significance. Story 30. Oh, Jennifer, you're so beautiful. You look like a horse. Greece around 2002. I don't care if it's an insult where I come from. Horses are beautiful creatures. Story 31. I think someone complimented my eyes on a day I was feeling down, and it stuck with me. One of the best feelings with friends is having those deep conversations. With no music in the background, just talking and sharing real emotions in the air. Story 32. An inviting smile from a stunning girl caught my attention while I was having lunch with friends on the patio at a place on Pearl Street in Boulder during my mid-20s. I often regret not getting up to say hello, as her smile felt genuine. However, my life has turned out well. I have 2 wonderful kids, and I am content. Story 33. At most, I have received 1 or 2 compliments in my entire life, and they were not significant enough to qualify as the best. Story 34. One morning, I went to work at a convenience store, where a couple of coworkers told me that I smelled good. One said I smell like a mom, and she meant it as a compliment. They liked my cologne. A couple of days ago, a neighbor said, I wouldn't think you were over 50. I am 66. I think the second might be a better compliment, but I really liked the first. Story 35. I haven't met you in person, but I feel comfortable talking with you. Story 36. A former coworker told me she didn't like the city until I joined the team at work. She said I brought a positive perspective and great recommendations that made her fall in love with the city again. She was sad about moving because I wouldn't be there. Story 37. Ronnie, you are going places. I feel like I will be reading your name on the front of a newspaper one day. Many people have told me something similar, but this particular message gives me a confidence boost and motivation to keep pursuing my dreams. Story 38. I don't know about the best. I tend to forget those. However, my therapist recently told me it's an honor to work with me. Story 39. The only person I have taken the virginity of became fully addicted to sex a few months later. I know it likely has nothing to do with me and isn't even a good thing, but part of me has chosen to take it as a compliment. Story 40. You have a calm feeling around you. When we are overwhelmed, it's as if you are the only rational one, so I want to work with you. Story 41. During intimate moments, my husband looks me in the eye and says I'm majestic. He has never said anything like it before. I love him. Story 42. A few years ago, I took a break from going to the MMA gym. While I was changing in the locker room, I overheard 3 guys talking about people, and they mentioned me. They said they missed me and that it felt more energetic when I was around because I took care of my sparring partners. I hid for a while and cried. Story 43. My current partner didn't reach out first after seeing our profiles for a few days because they thought my account was fake. Story 44. I had a cold, so my voice was a bit lower than usual. I worked in a hotel, so I was often on the phone. I returned from a break to find a note with a lipstick kiss on it that read, I love your voice. Story 45. A friend told me that I live in love with the concept of love. Although I've never had a relationship, I am 22 and still believe that having a person with you is the most beautiful thing that has ever happened to humanity. I am confident that, somewhere in the world, I will find that person. Story 46. You've got a really nice feature. 2 different girls have said that to me word for word. After the second time, I decided I'd believe it. Story 47. A good friend once told me that I will be a great father one day. That is essentially everything I strive for. Story 48. My friend and I were trying to enter the same career field. He succeeded on his first attempt, while I succeeded on my 27th. For context, my friend has his own apartment, is more physically fit and attractive, has better social skills, and is a former Marine. I still live with my parents and, until recently, only worked minimum wage jobs. My friend later expressed that he greatly admired and respected my perseverance and dedication to finally securing my job and starting my life. Story 49. You have a trustworthy accent. I heard that during an online game. I'm not a native English speaker. That comment was completely unrelated to the game or the discussion. Story 50. The guy I was dating saw me naked for the first time. He just stared at me and said, "Wow," in a breathy voice. It didn't work out, but I hold that memory with me as the one time I felt truly beautiful in my life. Story 51. I overheard someone describing me as the bravest person they have ever met. It was especially nice because I was not supposed to hear that. Story 52. You are a good person. I hope you know that. This occurred during a recent meaningful conversation with someone. Story 53. Someone just today told me I remind them of the Pokemon Quagsire, and it's honestly one of the nicest things that have ever been said to me. I have also been told I have a very nice, infectious laugh. Story 54. My senior superlative at our end-of-year marching band banquet was Best Band Pants for having the nicest appearance. I have been riding that high for 21 years now. Story 55. When I started my transition, I showed my friend's wife a picture of me in girl mode, and her exact reply was, "That's not you, her figure is much fuller." That made me feel very good. Story 56. I was working out my triceps in the gym with the pull-down bar when a guy approached me and said, "Nice biceps, man." He later asked me for advice, which I gladly provided. Gym positivity always goes a long way. Story 57. I have never had one, but someone said I sound and look like Alan Carr, and to this day, I'm still wondering if that's good or bad. Story 58. I had a friend tell me I was fascinating. She said, "I've never met anyone like you before." That felt great. Everyone wants to be unique. Another incident that comes to mind is when a kind lady in a hospital stopped me to say, "Oh my gosh, you're so pretty," before walking away. It was the randomness of the moment that caught me off guard, but in a good way. I had been in a bad mood and didn't think I looked good. Story 59. The one I'm most proud of is when my coworker told me, "I think you like everyone here, but I feel like if you quit, you'd never call, write, visit, or think about us ever again." I was honored. The second one was from a coworker at another job. She said, "You'd be really attractive if you weren't so short." Somewhat backhanded, but that's the part one liked about it. Story 60. I have never had a bad time with you, said my boyfriend while I was in the midst of a panic attack from overstimulation at a party, feeling absolutely worthless about my social tolerance. It may sound like a low bar, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. Story 61. I was having a particularly rough semester in college for personal reasons. One day in the spring, I put on a suit to go to a career fair for networking. I looked tired as I had not gotten much sleep. I also have a rather severe resting expression. Despite these factors, a random girl roughly my age came over to me and said, "You look great in that suit. I just had to come over and tell you." When a compliment comes from a friend, associate, or family member, it can be difficult to accept at face value. It's easy to convince myself that they don't really mean it. They just want to lift my spirits or have some other ulterior motive. If a stranger doesn't want anything from you, they have no real motive to be anything other than genuine. For this reason, it means more to me. Story 62. I was working over the weekend and had my 6-year-old son with me. The boss showed up, and I introduced my son. He put his hand out to shake. The boss said, "It's good to see that you have taught him manners." Story 63. Once, I was bitterly complaining to a friend that weekend after weekend, I was invited to parties, concerts, and events by my friends. I always had to juggle, pick, think, choose, apologize, and then make amends for the ones I had to decline because I could only be in one place at a time. That stressed me out. Then my friend said, "Have you ever realized your friends just like your company and always love to have you around?" No, I hadn't realized. Story 64. When someone I raised but didn't give birth to referred to me as their real dad over their biological dad. Story 65. I am 48 years old and married. Last week, while coming out of the building gym, A married lady neighbor with whom I generally exchange greetings approached me and said I look fitter and like a college boy. Felt unusual, but it made my day. I don't know what to make of this. Story 66. One man remarked that he saw me and said I looked better in person than in my pictures. I personally thought my pictures were stunning. I overheard a woman staring at me with a wide smile. I thought she might know me from somewhere, perhaps a friend of my mother's. As I walked closer to where she was sitting, the person next to her noticed her staring and asked what was wrong. She replied, "That girl is so beautiful. I have never forgotten that encounter." Story 67. A manager from a different shift or department to our director stated, "I would never play chess with him. He is always one step ahead." Story 68. Not sure really. I don't know if it's the best compliment, but it's definitely one that I really like. My hair is a natural dark brown, and I used to have the ends dyed red. One of my friends told me my hair looked like red velvet cake. Story 69. A girl once told me I always smell amazing. I have always showered daily and worn clean clothes. I've been riding that high for decades. Story 70. A friend told me that I remind them of Tom Bombadil. When I jokingly asked if it was because of my beard and my habit of passing out knives to friends, which I actually do, she replied that it was my demeanor and sense of humor. I still think about it occasionally and smile. Story 71. Over the years, I have had a few women tell me they thought about me when they were intimate with themselves. 2 decades later, I still remember it fondly. Story 72. I am a high school teacher. Today, one of my quieter students approached me after class and said, "I just wanted to let you know that I really enjoy your class and look forward to it every day. I hope you have a nice weekend." It was so sweet. Story 73. 5 years ago, a guy who used to sit behind me in class said he liked my way of talking. A girl a few months ago told me she wished her future kids would speak the same way I do. I'll never forget those moments. Story 74. In 3rd grade, I was sitting in the corner during our break time when a girl named Cora came up to me unexpectedly and told me she liked my voice. I've received compliments about my voice since then, but that one really stands out in my mind. We were never close friends. We only knew each other because we had the same teacher. However, she said something nice to me without any request attached. It was a kind gesture. Story 75. "You smell nice," said my middle school crush, which gave me such a confidence boost that I have never gone a day outside without wearing at least a bit of perfume. Story 76. When I worked in fast food as my first job at the age of 16, a female coworker told me I had really pretty eyes. That compliment has stayed with me for all these years. Story 77. One time in middle school, a kid I had a crush on told me my eyes looked like emeralds, and it has stuck with me ever since. Story 78. I was once told by a spaced-out guy at a music festival that I look just like Chesney Hawk. He followed me for quite a while, insisting on sharing this urgent information. Story 79. I have been called a silver fox by some of the ladies at work due to my graying stubble, but it was probably just a joke. Story 80. You are one of the kindest people I know. I can really ask you or tell you anything without feeling judged. You should have become a psychologist or psychiatrist. Story 81. I started a new job at 20 years old, and an older coworker told me she loved my name, Liliana, and that it sounded like a melody. I still think about this often. Story 82. I've received solid compliments. After that, I've allowed him to do all the thinking. Turns out we are both equally bad at managing my life, though in different ways. Story 83. The other night, I was told I have a nice voice. That's the first compliment I've received in a long time. Story 84. My partner tells me I am gorgeous, and every time it makes me giggle and feel pretty, even though I've heard it countless times. Story 85. During my freshman year of college, I was in the dorms when a guy approached me and said, "Hey, I've seen you talking to some people in the dorm, and I wanted to say hi and introduce myself because you seem really kind." That must have been the last time I saw him, but I will never forget it. Sometimes I wonder why that moment had such an impact. I've dated a few girls who have complimented me, which is nice, but I often feel that those compliments aren't coming from a genuine place. That guy had no reason to say what he did. There was nothing in it for him. I think that's why it mattered so much. Story 86. I was walking home after an art workshop when a random stranger complimented my artwork. I'm not very artistic, so it really made my day. Story 87. I wish you were my dad, said a young adult male. I take it as a very nice compliment, although it leaves me with questions. Story 88. I was in my late 50s a few years ago. I had tickets to a ballet waiting for me at the will call window. Four women were in line in front of me. One of the women turned to me and asked, "Are you one of the dancers?" Story 89. I'm not a hard man. I certainly wasn't 25 years ago when I was half the size I am now, and I look intimidating now. An older lady friend mentioned that the younger girls felt safe around me. I couldn't have done anything in the face of danger, and she said, "You would though." Story 90. That I feel like home. I've received that feedback multiple times. Those individuals cheated. It leads me to believe that they are accustomed to broken homes. Story 91. In my whole life, I have never met anyone like you, and I know I will never meet anyone like you again. You were like a son to us. It ripped my heart out. Story 92. I work with children, and one who was struggling with their gender identity wrote me a heartfelt letter expressing appreciation for not judging them and simply listening. They wished more people in the world were like that. They also mentioned gratitude for my efforts to help them understand the perspectives of others. Story 93. The best compliment I ever received was when my late wife said I was the most honorable man she had ever known. Story 94. A female friend with whom I got along well once told me, "I wish there were two of you," as I was happily married. Story 95. My love interest told me I look good in rainbow tie-dye. Days go by when he blushes at me when I wear it, and his priceless expression when he looks at me in it is unforgettable. Story 96. I was delivering a training session to management and other people in senior roles as a newcomer. The manager, known for being an exceptional trainer, approached me afterward and said, "You have great presence." Story 97. One time, a girl in class called me cute. I'm overweight and have no jawline, so I was pretty shocked. She's just a friend. Story 98. My friend's children always ask if I'm magical. One of them literally asked if I was a witch. No, kid. I'm a wizard. But that's close enough. This means I'm giving off the right vibes. Story 99. My wife and I were parents of a 1-month-old at the time, and I was having doubts about whether I was doing a good job. I was crying and worried, but my wife held me in her arms and told me that I was doing amazing. It might seem simple, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. Story 100. A few years ago, I applied to join my city's police force. It was a job I believed I would excel at. I had a degree, experience in various jobs, good references, and a clean record. I performed well on the written aptitude tests, and when the police officer in the exam room handed me my test and saw my scores, he remarked with a somewhat surprised expression, "Those are high marks." Next, I passed the fitness exams, aided by my strength from years of construction work and a Monday to Friday exercise regimen. I also completed the medical screening, behavioral descriptive interview, polygraph test, and psychological evaluation. Additionally, I volunteered over 20 hours per month in various roles within my church community. The day came for my recruitment officer to decide whether the organization would call my references and offer me a job, which would begin with attending their academy, or give me a 1 to 3 year deferral to work on any shortcomings and reapply after that period. She granted me the maximum deferral of 3 years and suggested that gaining some experience in law enforcement would demonstrate a commitment to a career in this field. That experience was unpleasant. Nearly everyone I knew was aware of my application process, and I received a lot of support from friends and family. I felt embarrassed, and for a long time, I had to inform people that I was given a 3-year deferral when they asked about my application status. A little while later, I received an email from my father, who had a long career as a police officer in our country's national police force. He wrote something along the lines of, "You would make an excellent police officer. I wish I had partners with your character and maturity when I was policing." The family environment I grew up in was not one that encouraged emotional vulnerability or expressing kind words to loved ones. Therefore, those words from my father have meant a great deal to me ever since. Story 101. As a black woman with blonde hair, a little girl once said, "Mommy, look, popcorn hair." My hair was down and frizzy, and I was smiling wider than a river. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.